Hello again. So now we're up to chapter 17, also known as Europe during the Enlightenment period. So this is like a time of, I guess you can say, growth for Europe. It's a time of some benefits. I would just like to highlight some benefits, and also a lot of different things that are going to be beneficial to Europe prior to, wars and other things that are going to be coming about as soon enough. So within Europe at this point in time, there's going to be population and economic growth. So there's going to be cheaper food. There's also going to be declines in mortality from infectious diseases. That's basically due to the fact that people are living longer, they're eating healthier. They also have better medication for certain types of diseases that can be cured. There's also going to be heavy urbanization of cities. So, as I mentioned, due to population, some people are going to try to move from the countryside to the cities and try to see what kind of opportunities they can have there. There's also going to be improvements in trade and manufacturing, and of course, transportation. So, we're talking about, establishment of better railways, paved roads, those types of things that are going to be very beneficial to Europe at this point in time. Europe is also going to be home to a world of goods that the book talks about. So it's going to be stocked with uncommon luxuries, things that we haven't seen before, such things as sugar, tobacco, tea, and coffee, chocolate, books, clocks, toys, china, all these different types of items that they can get, from the Middle East and, of course, from Asia as well. The book also talks about the leaders of the Enlightenment period. So people such as David Hume and Immanuel Kant. They also talk about various philosophers, so philosophers, which once again we haven't spoken about since Western Civ 1. So if you ever take Western Civ 1, we do talk about that then. So people such as Voltaire, Montesquieu, Diderot in his encyclopedia, one of the first that was documented. So we do talk about that. They also have inputs on the economy. So people such as Adam Smith. So Adam Smith, I talk about heavily if you ever take U.S. history, because we talk about a system of laissez-faire economy. And Adam Smith was responsible for writing a treatise known as An Inquiry into the Nature and Causes of Wealth of Nations. So he's talking about the economies, how things started to develop, how wealth started to develop into Europe, how things were segmented between groups. So we're talking about movements between, commoners into middle class into high positions of power as well. The book also talks about the expansion of people, specifically in terms of slavery in the Atlantic world. So we talked about the movement of peoples 2 chapters ago. We talked about the Columbian Exchange and the movement of peoples. So specifically in terms of slavery was part of that triangular trade system. So basically the slaves would be leaving from Africa. They would go into the New World to South America or the Caribbean. And then likewise, whatever products they produced, whether it be cotton, sugar, whatever those cash crops were, those products would then be flowing back with the money back to Europe as well. At this period in time, they estimated there's about 1 million African slaves within the New World at this point in time. So it's rather heavy because they needed it for those cash crops, for those plantations that they had within South America and elsewhere. Also, we talk about the exploration of the Pacific world. So we're going to talk about the movement of explorers that are going to try to understand where China is, New Zealand, the Antarctic. The book also talks about Jean-Jacques Rousseau and his social contract, Mary Wollstonecraft and the vindication of rights of women, and the book trade. So at this point in time, we're talking about a glorious revolution and an enlightenment period where people are actually very literate. People know how to read. So because of that, the establishment of these different philosophers and I guess you can say economists and those types of people are actually going to be able to read these books and understand them as well. So expansion of literacy is going to be very heavy at this point in time too. The book also talks about the 7 Years' War. So the 7 Years' War was fought between 1756 and 1763. It was fought between Prussia and then, of course, with Austria. So Prussia's main ally at this point in time is, of course, going to be Great Britain. And then Austria is going to be siding with both France and Russia. So it was a war that didn't last too long, but it ended up in stalemate. So basically what that meant is that there was no victor. But what it did start, the 7 Years' War, is that it started the isolation of Germany as it is. So what ended up happening was that now, because the provinces are becoming bigger, specifically Austria, specifically Prussia, what ends up happening now is that Germany is going to slowly start to form. We're going to talk about later on as the chapters go on, we're going to talk about other leaders that are going to be coming to the forefront to kind of provide Germany with the needs that it needs to become the country that it is today. So we are going to see that, but that development is going to start thanks to this war. Okay, so just keep that in mind. It's also going to impact the colonial nations as well, because Great Britain does have its own colonies, so there's going to be some sort of an impact with them as well. And the book also finishes up with the American Revolution of 1776. So think about why the colonists in the 13 colonies wanted to fight against Great Britain. So predominantly was that they didn't want to be controlled by a monarch. They didn't want to be controlled by King George. They did not want to be heavily taxed. Because if you remember, they were being taxed on tea and sugar and all these different types of items. They also wanted their independence. So think about all the different things that ended up playing a part and then playing a role, and then also playing a part with Great Britain specifically. Because you have to understand is that Great Britain was recovering from the 7 Years' War, and they were recovering from other wars going on at this point in time too. So think about the military views between Great Britain having a well thought out military, and then thinking about the colonists, how the colonists were prepared to fight this battle and why they were so victorious as well. Okay, so just think about that as you're reading through the chapter as well. All right, thanks.